Distinguished delegates, I hope you enjoyed the special event of COP5 taking place today during the lunch break, entitled Mercury in Cosmetics, More Than What Meets the Eye. It was co-hosted by Jeff and UNEP. Before we adjourn the session this morning, the Friends of the President group on reporting was established with the mandate to consider unresolved issues, including those raised by parties in plenary, with a view to finalizing the draft decision on reporting. It is co-facilitated by Paulina Riquelme from Chile and Annika Bedouin from Canada. And I was to come back to you with a timetable for its work, also taking into account the changes to the schedule for the day introduced in plenary this morning. I identified several parties that had indicated in their interventions that they had comments on specific proposed amendments to the reporting format contained in document 15/add1 and to the guidance document contained in document 15/add2. However, I also indicated that the group was open to any party wishing to contribute to finalizing these issues. I hope that this is now clear for you. I invite the Secretariat to project the schedule. Thank you very much. Secretariat, can you please provide more information on this?
Thank you, Madam President. Good day, everyone. So you can see now the schedule for the work of the Friends of the President on national reporting. So the group will meet in room 9 from 4:30 to 6:30, 16:30, 18:30. And just also to make sure that it is clear how the contact group on program of work and budget will continue, please note that the session, the lunch session from 13 to 15 of the contact group on program of work and budget has been finalized. There will be no session for the program of work and budget contact group during the afternoon plenary. However, there will be an evening session for the contact group on budget, and the exact timing of that evening session will be announced during this afternoon plenary. For sure will also be repeated at the end of it. And this is to ensure we have an appropriate work plan for the evening based also on how the plenary will progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. And now let me remind you the revised schedule for this afternoon session, which I announced also in the morning plenary. So we will start with agenda item 4E on waste, followed by agenda item 4K, effectiveness evaluation, and agenda item 4A on supply and trade. We will take agenda items 4D and E on emissions and releases in the afternoon plenary if time allows. Otherwise, these two items will be considered in the Wednesday morning plenary. We turn now to the agenda item 4F on mercury waste, consideration of the relevant thresholds. I wish to recall Article 11 on mercury waste. COP has been working to establish the thresholds according to this article since COP1. In COP3 established definition for category A waste, namely waste consisting on mercury or mercury compounds, and in category B, waste, namely waste containing mercury or mercury compounds. COP4 established the threshold for mining waste and requested the group of technical experts to work on thresholds for category C waste, namely waste contaminated with mercury. I invite now the Secretariat to present you the document prepared for item 4F. This includes the report of the group as set out in document 9. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. So the list of documents will, I think, come up on the screen soon, but I'm now introducing the document UNEP MC COP5/9, the top of the list, which includes the outcome of the work of the group of technical experts on mercury waste thresholds as mandated by decision MC 4/6. The information documents are INF 12 and INF 13. The group of technical experts on mercury waste thresholds established by COP decision MC 2/4, comprised of 25 members, was co-chaired by Oluwatoyin Olawanji of Nigeria and Gabriela Isaac of Romania. The group had 4 online meetings and met face-to-face in February 2023, thanks to the financial contribution from Japan. The group worked on 2 specific matters mandated by decision MC 4/6, namely, develop a report to the Conference of the Parties with the goal of recommending and facilitating a decision on waste falling under subcategory 2C of Article 11, i.e. waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds, or category C mercury waste. Number 2, develop a guidance document on test methods to be used for the Tier 2 threshold for tailings from mining other than primary mercury mining. The group's report on the first mandate is set out in Annex 1 to document 9. The group recommends establishing a single threshold based on total concentration of mercury for category C waste. The group could not agree on the exact number and proposed 3 numbers in square brackets, 25, 15, 10 milligram per kilogram. It is for the COP to decide on the single value. The report recommends 1 caveat for the threshold to allow parties to choose not to use the threshold as long as they have targeted waste management measures in place to protect human health and the environment, in which case such parties shall notify the Secretariat and those notifications are made available to the public. The group also presents several other recommendations on capacity building, review of technical guidance under the Basel Convention, legal clarity with respect to the mercury waste status during the movement of waste across international boundaries, and review of the threshold after 4 years. INF 12 presents technical information that the group of technical experts used in its work, including information that decision MC 4/6 requests the Secretariat to collect from parties. With regard to the second mandate, INF 13 sets out the guidance document on test methods to be used for the Tier 2 threshold for tailings from mining other than primary mercury mining, developed by the group. COP4 had established 2-tier thresholds for mine tailings, Tier 1 being 25 milligram per kilogram total concentration, and Tier 2 being 0.15 milligram per liter from leach testing. The document provides guidance on the leach test methods to be used for the Tier 2 thresholds. Annex 2 to document 9 sets out decision for the consideration, a draft decision for the consideration of the COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like now to invite the co-chairs of the group of technical experts to reflect on the work of the group. In this regard, I'm inviting Oluwatoyin Olabanji to speak on behalf of the co-chairs. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am honored to provide a brief intervention on behalf of my co-chair, Gabriela, who is unfortunately unable to attend this meeting. The most important mandate of the experts group was to propose thresholds for Category C waste. The group has been working on the thresholds since COP2 in 2018. Further to this, COP4 requested the group to develop a report to facilitate a COP decision on Category C waste thresholds. Madam President, the group had a face-to-face meeting in February 2023. This was a very productive meeting. Experts gathered in Geneva very well prepared with a constructive spirit to develop a report. The group reviewed all the technical information submitted by parties. The group agreed that a single value should be established based on total concentration of mercury, noting the need for flexibility with regards to parties that already manage mercury waste within their regulatory system. Madam President, I am delighted to be able to submit the report of the expert group to the Conference of the Parties, which we believe will greatly facilitate the decision on the Category C waste threshold. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the members and observers of the expert group for their hard work, to parties and stakeholders for their submission of information, to the Secretariat for the excellent preparation for the meeting, and to Japan for its financial support that made the meeting possible. I believe that parties have to further consider these options and flexibility measures so that the COP can collectively find a solution. Having a clear definition of mercury waste is of utmost importance for the full implementation of the Minamata Convention. On behalf of the expert group, I call for a collaborative spirit in considering this very important matter. On this note, I want to once again say thank you to the members of the expert group. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, and thank you as co-chair, and through you, I would like to thank you to all members of the expert group working on this matter. Now, moving on, I would like to invite interventions from the floor. I will give priority in the speakers list to parties first, then observers. I have on my list Burkina Faso that pressed for some time already. I'm just asking, is the intervention on this topic or it was related to a different topic? You have the floor.
Okay, merci bien.
Yes, thanks very much, Madam President. I'd like to take the floor once again on behalf of the Africa region, to make a statement on behalf of the Africa region. Our regional group has taken part, an active part, in the group of technical experts set up under decision MC 5. The mandate was extended by MC 35 and 6 to discuss thresholds for Category C waste. Under Article 11, well, the group has discussed various matters depending on matters and the region, and it's 10 milligrams per kilo was the agreed amount the agreed threshold. Nevertheless, we believe that our continent is very vulnerable because of many industrial facilities and mining facilities and the exposure to illicit trade in waste of various types. Also, our group supports the review by the Basel Convention of their guidance and the technical directive on the environmentally rational management of waste contaminated by mercury or its compounds, with the special attention to category 2C of Article 11 in line with the relevant recommendations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Burkina Faso. Next on my list, I have European Union, followed by United States of America. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The EU and its member states would like to thank all experts who contributed to the work undertaken during the intersessional period, as well as the Secretariat for supporting this process and preparing the draft decision. We strongly hope that this COP will adopt a decision agreeing a single value for defining a threshold for mercury-contaminated waste based on the total mercury content as proposed by the expert group. With regard to the three proposed values, the EU would have a preference for 25 milligram per kilogram of total concentration in line with the position taken at COP4 and following the hazard-based approach. But we are also ready to accept any of the other two proposed values in order to find an agreement at this COP. The EU and its member states have doubts about the need to review the agreed threshold again at COP7 and to continue the mandate of the expert group to that end. And finally, Madam President, we support tasking the Secretariat to begin the process of developing, on the basis of the Basel Convention technical guidelines, requirements for the environmentally sound management of wastes consisting of, containing, or contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds according to paragraph 3A of Article 11. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, European Union. Next on my list, United States of America, followed by Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States appreciates the work and progress of the intersessional group of experts, including the work of co-chairs from Nigeria and Romania, and financial support from Japan for the in-person meeting. The United States looks forward to productive discussions at this COP to reach a consensus on the definition for waste contaminated with mercury under Article 11, paragraph 2C, and that such a definition protects human health, protects the environment, and is implementable by all parties. Specifically, the United States supports a Category C waste threshold of 10 milligrams per kilogram or 15 milligrams per kilogram total mercury concentration, along with the inclusion of language similar to that found in paragraph 2 of the draft decision, which acknowledges parties may alternatively maintain existing waste management practices subject to some requirements which satisfy paragraph 3 of Article 11. The United States notes that, for parties to the Basel Convention, there have been some questions as to whether existing obligations under paragraph 3C of Article 11 that limit transboundary movement for the purpose of environmentally sound disposal would be changed by paragraph 2 of the draft decision. In our view, parties' paragraph 3 obligations would remain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States of America. Moving on to Japan, followed by Pakistan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Japan would like to thank the group of technical experts on mercury waste for their dedicated and extensive work, and welcome their recommendations in consideration relevant thresholds under Article 11. We would also like to extend our appreciation to the Secretariat for its continued support in achieving the mandate of the group and preparing a draft decision. We believe it is crucial to agree to the threshold for waste contaminated with mercury at this COP in order to promote the environmentally sound management of mercury waste at all levels as soon as possible. With regard to a threshold for waste contaminated with mercury, we would like to generally support the direction set out in the draft decision to establish a uniform threshold with a total concentration of mercury while having an opt-out clause, particularly for those parties that already have measures in place to ensure the environmentally sound management. At the same time, we also believe that a uniform threshold should be backed up with scientific evidence in order to support an informed decision-making in each country, while further noting that the specific value should be considered in tandem with the opt-out clause. We would also welcome a proposed work of the Secretariat to clarify the application of the provisions concerning the transboundary movement of mercury waste in collaboration with the Secretariat of the BRS Convention. We may propose some editorial changes in the course of discussion, but in general, we are supportive of the direction of the draft decision and looking forward to further deliberation at the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japan. Next on my list is Pakistan, followed by Norway. Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Pakistan would like to support and appreciate the work done by the technical experts and Secretariat for the intersessional work on the mercury waste threshold. And we want to support about the establishment of mercury waste threshold in this COP because this is pending since COP 1 and we have to finalize one point for the same concentration in mercury waste threshold, and we want to discuss and deliberate in the contact group. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Pakistan. Next is Norway, followed by China.
Thank you, Madam President. Norway welcomes the report on the intersessional work and would like to thank the expert group for the work that has been done. For Norway, it is important to have a restrictive, hazard-based approach that ensures the environmentally sound management also of waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds. Norway supports setting a threshold for mercury waste falling under subparagraph 2C of Article 11, establishing a threshold with a total mercury concentration above 25 milligrams per kilogram to be regarded as mercury waste. For Norway, it is important to reach an agreement at this COP, and we look forward to the discussion in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. Next on my list is China, followed by Iraq.
Thank you, Madam President. The Chinese delegation thanks the Secretariat and the expert group for their intersessional hard work on establishing mercury waste thresholds. China will continue to support the group through active participation. The environmentally sound disposal of mercury waste is a challenge faced by many. In particular, wastes contaminated by mercury or its compound have complex categories and exposure scenarios. The Chinese delegation supports further assessment on 3 options. At the same time, given that in 12 as compiled shows that many parties use various methods to establish national specific mercury waste thresholds, China therefore supports all parties in setting national level thresholds based on their actual circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. I have next Iraq, followed by Thailand.
Yes, thank you very much. شكرا سيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I should like to thank the technical team that prepared these excellent thresholds. And regarding the situation of Iraq, the choosing of a suitable threshold for us for all kinds of mercury waste must depend on the level of danger that this waste constitutes to human health and environment on the basis of scientifically proven data. At the same time, we have to apply the provisions of Basel Convention regarding transboundary waste. We believe that under the Minamata provision, proving that it has financial, technical, and capacity building mercuries. These should take into consideration the needs of specific countries and provide technical assistance for them to manage their waste, as well as tools for testing and measurements. We should like to note that up to this moment under Basel, this kind of assistance is not provided to countries. We await that this request will be taken into consideration and that they would be enumerated amongst the various types of polluted waste and provide the assistance accordingly. We should also like to take into consideration the polluted soils of mercury and other kinds of polluted sites in addition to dental amalgam and others. And we believe these are part of the priorities that should be taken into consideration. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Iraq, for your statement. Next, I have on my list Thailand, followed by Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, Sawadee Ka. As Thailand takes a floor at the first time, my delegation would like to congratulate you as Madam President for this particular COP, the occasions of 10th anniversary after adopting the Minamata Convention. Beneath your leadership, Madam President, Thailand believes that the meeting will be wisely guided and lead up to all fruitful expected outcomes. Next, Thailand wishes to express our profound gratitude to the government and people of Switzerland for their very warm hospitality in hosting this virtual COP5. Also extending our sincere appreciation to the Executive Secretary, her team, and all involved in preparing all settings to organize this meeting in the efficient manner. Madam President, my delegation also aligns itself with the stakes of our APG statement, in particular the mercury waste threshold. Consequently, my delegation would like to express our sincere thanks to top efforts of the Secretariat and all experts involved in the process. By taking into account an understanding of different national circumstances and capabilities among all parties, Thailand is of view that the approach to determine the waste threshold should be initially practical and not later putting any party unnecessary burden toward its implementation efforts, then facilitating its willingness to start the comply and also allowing to choose the appropriate measures as long as they have measures in place to ensure the environmental sound management of mercury waste in order to step closer to make mercury history. Hence, Thailand reaffirms its support for setting the threshold limit value for waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds with a total mercury concentration at 25 mg per kilogram at this COP, and support to have the discussion on the matter in the contact group that will be established afterwards as well. Thank you very much ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much, Thailand. Next is Switzerland, followed by Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, we would like to thank the co-chairs, all the experts, and the Secretariat for their hard intersessional work. For the aim of a threshold for the category waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds, Switzerland supports the total concentration approach as it is easy to measure, cheap, and internationally comparable. With respect to the three values given, in the draft decision in Annex 2 of the document MC/COP5/9, we have a preference for a lower value of 10 or 15 milligrams of mercury per kilogram of waste. As it became very clear during intersessional work that some parties may have conflicts with their national provisions by implementing a concentration value based on the total concentration approach, the draft decision is foreseeing an opt-out clause in Bar 2. Switzerland believes that this provision is a landing zone for a successful enforcement of the draft decision. Switzerland views it's very important to adopt a threshold value and the decision text at this COP in order to finalize the extensive work of the past years on the item of waste threshold. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Now we move on to the Islamic Republic of Iran, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Madam President. The Department of Environment of Islamic Republic of Iran has set up national limits and standards for hazardous wastes, including mercury. That is one of the most important measures adopted in the field of environmental zone management, as these limits and standards, along with a comprehensive set of environmental rules and regulations, have created a strong set for the management of hazardous substances in our country. Meanwhile, we believe that for implementing environmental zone management of mercury-contaminated waste worldwide, it is necessary to formulate and specify limits and implement them at the international level. Our delegation is ready to share its deliberations around the proposed alternatives on total concentration of mercury for waste management, for waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds in the contact group. Also, as these standards must consider the different circumstances of each party, we would like to highlight the recommendations of the group of technical experts to the Conference of the Parties that enough consideration should be given to capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer to enable the identification, analysis, and other elements of the environmentally sound management of mercury waste falling under subcategory 2C of Article 11. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Iran. Next on my list is Argentina, and after Argentina, I have 6 more requests. I have seen that a lot of parties expressed interest in a contact group. So in this regard, I would like to close the list of statements in the plenary and give you the opportunity to express your views also in the contact group that is going to be established. So now I have Argentina followed by Australia.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente. Argentina.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Argentina would like to join with other state parties in thanking the Secretariat for the work it's done. Also thank the expert group for the work done intersessionally on mercury waste. Within this framework, Argentina considers a priority subject for this COP to adopt a threshold on mercury waste in order to be able to make progress in the implementation of Article 11 of the Convention. We believe that all state parties should implement and fulfill the obligations established under this convention as far as handling of mercury residues are concerned. In this connection, Madam, we'd like to point out that many countries, among which we have Argentina, are already making great efforts in order to manage this type of waste in an environmentally sustainable way. For example, our own national legislation on hazardous waste is a good example. And for this reason, for those countries that do not yet have such tools available, they should have a reference threshold that will guarantee the protection of human health and of the environment against man-made mercury emissions or emissions that contain mercury. In this regard, we'd like to underscore that it's not just the identification of this waste that is important, but also the having available of technology that allow for disposing of such waste. These technologies are not easily available in many countries of our own region, and therefore they need to be transported across boundaries over long distances with the risk and cost that this entails. For this reason, we consider it very important for progress to be made in technical assistance, in development of capacities, and in technology transfer toward the developing countries in this particular area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Argentina. Next on my list, Australia, followed by Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving Australia the floor. We would like to extend our gratitude to the members of the Technical Expert Group for their extensive and important work on mercury waste issues. It is time the COP reached agreement on this item. Australia strongly supports establishing one total concentration threshold for defining waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds to better facilitate more effective and efficient monitoring and compliance. When we consider the threshold value, it's important to seek balance between protecting human health and the environment and taking into consideration practical implementation, such as transport, disposal, or recovery cost issues. We have a preference for total concentration threshold value of 15 milligrams per kilogram. It is our view that also having a flexible, nationally determined approach will mean that all parties will be able to participate in effective and efficient monitoring and compliance. We are looking forward to a productive discussion in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. Next, Saudi Arabia, followed by Mexico.
Thank you, Madam President. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia thanks the Technical Experts Group on thresholds of mercury. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia participated actively in all the meetings that have been convened in the intercessional period. Regarding the current work on the threshold of mercury, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia feels that the main challenge is the tailings of mercury, which is in para C of Article 11, regarding different measures that are applied in differing situations. The Kingdom hopes that we will provide more clearance for the three thresholds that have been reached in the expert meetings based on scientific evidence that takes into consideration the social and environmental situations of each country. Thus, the parties can choose the measures that suit them so long as they are the adequate ones to deal with their waste. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hopes that the mandate of the expert group will be renewed, and we will continue to participate actively in their work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. Next on.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Mexico would like to echo those who have expressed gratitude to the expert group and also for the establishment of thresholds by the Secretariat. Although our present laws recognize a threshold of 25 milligrams, we are willing to discuss in the context of a contact group in order to find a safe threshold that will also allow for environmentally sustainable handling of waste, and that also is in keeping with other international conventions. We consider it very important for national conditions to be taken into account as far as waste processing is concerned. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving us the floor. Since we are taking the floor for the first time, we would like to express our gratitude to Switzerland for its hospitality, and we'd also like to thank the Secretariat for having organized this important event. Likewise, we would like to welcome the efforts undertaken in order to continue working on this subject. Peru welcomes the efforts undertaken by the expert group in order to establish a threshold for mercury waste. We believe that it is very important to make progress in establishing a single threshold. In this connection, we believe it's important to always bear in mind a preventative attitude in establishing such a threshold, because this can lead to contaminating further the existing waste sites. In this context, we will stand for the lower threshold without this excluding us contemplating other thresholds that this group has studied. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Colombia would like to thank the Secretariat and the technical group for the thresholds on mercury waste. Thank you for your session intercessionally, as well as for the drafting of the report that has been presented to this Conference of the Parties. We would also like to thank Japan for its generous contributions, which have allowed the holding of a face-to-face expert group. We consider it important for this Conference of the Parties to establish a threshold for mercury waste as indicated in Category 2C of Article 11. We take due note of the fact that the technical expert groups has presented 3 possible values, and we are open to discuss these in the framework of the contact group. The experts group also proposed a mechanism for those parties that would not opt for the proposed threshold. Independently of the threshold we might agree on at this COP, Colombia considers it important to determine the hazard analysis and also those mechanisms determined at a national level that will provide for certain flexibility and the work in the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next on my list, Bangladesh, followed by Chile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bangladesh appreciates the intersessional work by the group of technical experts on threshold for mercury waste under 2C of Article 11. Madam Chair, in many developing countries, waste management is not well controlled, leading to open dumping. Communities may be located adjacent to or even on dumping site. I appreciate to take into account the socio-economic and condition and waste management infrastructure, as well as the national capabilities and circumstances of the developing countries. I wish to discuss it in details in contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bangladesh, Chile, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Chile places great value on the work of the experts group and is very thankful to Japan for its financial contribution, enabling this group to undertake its work. We'd like to make a brief statement because in the case of Chile, our legislation establishes thresholds based on lixiviation processing. And therefore the total mercury concentration in our case, or the one that's being discussed, does not coincide with our own internally legislated thresholds. However, we hope to discuss this within the contact group that you will establish at the end of this agenda item. we would be more favorable of the second paragraph of the recommendations of the experts group, point B, which says to not apply the threshold in the previous paragraph in order to determine whether a given waste threshold is contemplated in the convention, so long as subparagraph D conditions are complied with. If this opt-out clause is permitted, we will probably be able to conclude the negotiations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chile. Now let me turn to organizations. I'm going to give the floor first to IPEN, followed by Environment and Social Development Organization. IPEN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I speak on behalf of IPEN on the matter of establishing total threshold concentrations for mercury waste, category C, wastes that are contaminated with mercury. IPEN has taken part in the expert group on mercury waste since its formation several years ago. The expert group has made considerable progress on several types of mercury waste, and its recommendations have mostly been adopted by the COP. However, the group could not reach consensus on a single value for category C waste. The expert group has proposed 3 values in the brackets of 10, 15, and 25 milligrams per kilogram. IPEN supports the strictest possible level that is practical to apply to ensure that human exposure is reduced, as much mercury waste as possible is captured within the definition, and environmental impact is minimized. The majority of experts on the group supported values in the lower range, while only 4 experts supported the high level of 25 milligrams per kilogram. Some members were concerned about analytical capacity for the lower proposed levels, but screening devices can now confidently measure mercury in the 5 to 10 milligram per kilogram range. IPEN supports the adoption of the lowest possible level between 1 and 10 milligram per kilogram, and several countries already use thresholds in this range. Under no circumstances should a level be adopted that exceeds 10 milligrams per kilogram. It will simply not be protective for human health and the environment, and will create a license to pollute for certain industries. 10 milligram per kilogram is still a relatively high level, and if adopted, IPEN suggests it should be reviewed by the COP within 3 years to establish if it is sufficiently protective of human health and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, IPEN. Next speaker, Environment and Social Development Organization, followed by Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions.
Thank you, Madam President. ESDO, Bangladesh, on behalf of Zero Mercury Working Group, had an opportunity to follow the work of waste thresholds and participated at the technical meeting earlier this year. ESDO and Zero Mercury Working Group are opposed to the 25 ppm threshold, which would allow vast quantity of mercury contaminated waste to escape treatment and be used in a way that can land further contamination, such as agricultural applications as soil improvement and reuse in the construction industry. This threshold would further allow waste incinerator, bottom ash, and Swiss sludge to avoid regulation as mercury waste under the treaty. In many developing and underdeveloped countries, waste management is uncontrolled, leading the open dumping and unincinerated disposal. As a result, a high level of protection is needed to ensure the safety of the communities in their areas. As there are substantial number of national thresholds already in place, as discussed during the expert group, ESDO and Zero Mercury Working Group support a decision for setting a threshold on mercury which should be as low as possible within a maximum 10 ppm. We also agree that a review process should be kept open to consider the revision of this threshold latest at COP7. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, ESDO. Now I give the floor to BRS Conventions.
Many thanks, Madam President. The Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions have cooperated with the Minamata Convention throughout the years. An important area of programmatic cooperation between the Minamata Convention and the Basel Convention has been the environmentally sound management of mercury waste. The Basel Convention technical guidelines on environmentally sound management of waste consisting of containing or contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds, which were updated at the invitation of the second meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Conventions, were adopted by the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention at its 15th meeting in 2022. Moreover, the BRS Secretariat has participated in meetings of the group of technical experts on mercury waste thresholds convened in 2022 and 2023. In its report, we note that the group recommends that the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention consider inviting the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention to further update its mercury technical guidelines. We also note that the present meeting is invited to consider deciding on possible further work on any need for further legal clarity in relation to the transport of mercury waste across international boundaries. During its 16th meeting held earlier this year, the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention reaffirmed the importance of continued cooperation with the Minamata Convention. The BRS Secretariat stands ready to support this important work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, BRS Secretariat. Okay, thank you for all your interventions, and I can see clearly that COP appreciates the work of the expert group and also appreciates the contribution from Japan that made possible the face-to-face meeting. I also see that there is a general support to consider the recommendations of the expert group and the draft decision in line with these recommendations. However, there are some different views, and they were expressed with regard to the specific value of the threshold. In this sense, I urge parties to show a spirit of mutual understanding and flexibility, and noting that parties may choose to use different thresholds to find a solution that is acceptable to all. So, in order to find a solution, I propose to establish a contact group on mercury waste threshold and to request it to begin its work this evening after the afternoon plenary adjourns. And I propose the following mandate of the contact group. So, the contact group should consider the threshold for waste falling under subcategory 2C of Article 11 and propose a threshold value to be agreed by the COP, taking into consideration the proposal from the group of technical experts. Also, to consider the other elements of the draft decision as set out in Annex 2 to Document 9, including review of the threshold, extension of the mandate of the expert group, legal clarity of the transport of mercury waste across international boundaries, taking into consideration the comments made by parties. I would like to invite the co-chair of this contact group to report back to plenary tomorrow morning and to present the outcome achieved. Are there any objections to the proposal to establish a contact group on mercury waste thresholds? I see no objection, so it is decided. Well, in this regard, and following close consultation with the Bureau, I would like to request Zaigam Abbas of Pakistan and Carissa Kaufner of the United States of America to take the task to facilitate the work of the contact group as co-chairs. Are there any objections from the plenary to this proposal? I see no objections, so it is decided. Zaigam Abbas and Carissa Kovner, thank you very much for taking on this very important task. Also, together with you, Eisaku Toda, Senior Program Officer with the Secretariat, will support the work of the contact group. For further information, I would like to let you know that the contact group will meet today in the afternoon from 7 to 10 p.m. in room A. I see Chile, so you have the floor.
Madam President, we believe that probably the mandate to this group could be enlarged. We heard several countries in delegation that expressed the need to consider as well an opt-out clause. So in the case countries do not use a total concentration of mercury, we should have that also in the mandate, that possibility that this opt-out clause could be negotiated in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chile. Taking into consideration your intervention, and just to let you know that it was not meant to be excluded, I made an amendment to the mandate, and I would like to read it one more time. Consider the other elements of the draft decision as set out in Annex 2 to Document 9, including, but not limited to, review of the threshold, extension of the mandate of the expert group, legal clarity on the transport of mercury waste across international boundaries, taking into consideration the comments made by parties. So basically, I have included, but not limited to. Is this an agreeable solution for you? Thank you so much. Thank you. Good. So with this set out, I would like to propose you to turn our attention to agenda item 4K, effectiveness evaluation. So, the Conference of the Parties, within 6 years of the Convention coming into force, it is to begin its first periodic evaluation of the effectiveness of the Convention. It is important to point out that Article 22 is not an evaluation of any particular party, but of the Convention as a whole. As you will recall, at its fourth meeting, the Conference of the Parties, in decision MC4/11 agreed to start the first effectiveness evaluation of the Convention. In the same decision, the COP adopted a framework for the effectiveness evaluation and established an open-ended scientific group. The COP also acknowledged the work done on the indicators for the effectiveness evaluation and requested the Secretariat to support an intersessional process to refine the list of indicators for consideration and possible adoption by the Conference of the Party at its 5th meeting. With this as background, I would like now to turn to the Secretariat to introduce the documents for this agenda item.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished delegates. For this agenda item, we have one working document with 2 addenda and the number of information documents as listed on the screen. If I could have the next slide, please. Let me begin with working document number 16, which contains in section 1 an introduction. Section 2 contains an overview of the intersessional work, namely the work of the open-ended scientific group and the process to refine indicators that was done by the Secretariat. And in section 3, it contains proposed action for the Conference of the Parties. The document, document 16, also contains 2 annexes. Annex 1 contains the draft decision focusing on the 3 outstanding issues for consideration at this meeting, namely the end date for the first effectiveness evaluation, the establishment of the effectiveness evaluation group, and the adoption of the indicators for the first effectiveness evaluation. Annex 2 of the same document contains the terms of reference for the effectiveness evaluation group. Turning now to the addenda of working document 16, Addendum 1 on indicators contains an introduction and contextualization of the proposed indicators, as well as an annex setting out 36 proposed draft indicators for the effectiveness evaluation process of the Minamata Convention. Addendum 2 sets out the progress report of the open-ended scientific group and describes the work done in the intersessional period. Namely, it summarizes the 3 draft plans developed by the open-ended scientific group as mandated in its terms of reference. It's worth to note that the progress report of the open-ended scientific group is supplemented by 2 information documents. And these are information document number 24, containing the draft plans developed by the open-ended scientific group to support the first effectiveness evaluation, and information document 37 that contains an update on the work of the open-ended scientific group. Further to these documents, deliberations on agenda item 4K are supported by 3 additional information documents. These are information document 22, containing the key findings of the draft report on mercury trade supply and demand. And here I would like to note that the draft report itself is available through the Convention's website. Then we have information document number 23, containing a proposed plan for the development of Article 21 synthesis report in the preliminary draft report. Information document 25 contains a non-exhaustive list of available documents and reports to support the first effectiveness evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. As noted by the Secretariat, there are 3 outstanding matters for our consideration, and these are end date of first effectiveness evaluation. The second is establishment of the effectiveness evaluation group, and the third is adoption of indicators. And with this, I would like now to open the floor for interventions on the draft decision and specifically on these three matters. Kindly note that, as you are already aware, I'm going to give priority to parties, and then I will open the floor for observers. Okay, first on my list, it's Uruguay, followed by the European Union.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This intervention will be made on behalf of GRULAC. GRULAC would like to call upon members in order to provide the necessary financial and expertise backup for the national implementation plans and improvement of the plans related to the Minamata Convention. We would also urge that a worldwide vigilance plan be established using indicators established by this conference in order to assess the efficiency. The vigilance plan will not only use comparable data for taking decisions at global level, but will also contribute to strengthening national capacities for implementation of the Minamata Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uruguay. Next on my list, European Union, followed by Botswana.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, the European Union and its member states welcome the work developed by the open-ended scientific group and their outputs prepared for the Conference of the Parties, as well as the documents drafted by the Minamata Secretariat. We strongly believe that the open-ended scientific group report and its outputs can serve as a first stage of the monitoring, data compilation, and data analysis. In this regard, we encourage useful and ongoing collaboration with existing networks and databases to explore synergies and identify data gaps in the field of Mercury monitoring and assessment. We welcome the work done in developing effectiveness evaluation indicators. We can support the proposed indicators that have been put forward, and in that regard, we find that the monitoring indicators are key as they address the levels and trends of mercury in the environment and in humans, including the more vulnerable populations. We support the draft decision included as Annex 1 in document UNEP/MC/COP/16, as well as the addendum documents UNEP/MC/COP5/16 Addendum 1 and Addendum 2. Regarding the terms of reference for the Effectiveness Evaluation Group, we regret that we were not able to conclude on the composition of the last COP. However, we are confident that we will succeed this time at this COP. We believe that the Effectiveness Evaluation Group needs to be both efficient and cost-effective, and as such, we strongly urge for not more than 3 members per UN region in that group. We have good experience from 3 rounds of the effectiveness evaluation under the Stockholm Convention. There, the equivalent committee only consists of 2 members per UN region. That effectiveness evaluation group covers not only one substance, but over 30 diverse, complex organic chemicals. Finally, Madam Chair, we understand the concern expressed by the open-ended scientific group with respect to finalizing the first cycle at COP6. In this connection, the European Union and the member states are flexible as to when the first cycle of effectiveness evaluation should end, either at COP6 or at COP7. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Next on my list, Botswana, followed by Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam President. The Africa region has been in the forefront of the negotiations of the Minamata Convention, as mercury issues are very important in our region. Each day we live with the destructive impacts of mercury on human health and the environment. And for that, we are eager to see fruitful results of implementation of the Minamata Convention to curb these impacts. The region therefore takes note of the progress made by the open-ended scientific group on the effectiveness evaluation and is looking forward to finalizing the timeline of the first effectiveness evaluation and the terms of reference of the effectiveness evaluation group with respect to its membership. Madam President, indicators play a crucial role in providing valuable information and insights on measurable criteria for evaluating progress or monitoring performance. Therefore, the region is looking forward for the COP to adopt ambitious indicators that reflect the ambition of the Minamata Convention in order to have an operative effectiveness evaluation framework. And to do that effect, we request the Secretariat to continue supporting the effectiveness evaluation process. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. Next on my list, Switzerland, followed by United States of America.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the floor. First of all, Switzerland would like to acknowledge the excellent work done by the open-ended scientific group in organizing the work and drawing up the various plans for collecting, organizing, and analyzing the monitoring, emissions, and release data. We would also like to thank the parties involved and the Secretariat for their facilitation and cooperation during the intersessional period. Switzerland fully supports the adoption at this meeting of the refined list of indicators based on the results of the consultation in January of this year. Switzerland also supports the adoption at this meeting of the terms of reference for the effectiveness evaluation group already discussed at COP4, with a certain number of representatives from parties that will allow for an efficient and cost-effective work. In view of the significant amount of work to be done and some delays, we think it should be considered that the effectiveness evaluation report should be finalized towards COP7. Switzerland would be happy to join further discussions that would take place at this COP on the remaining questions. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Now I'm giving the floor to US, followed by Norway.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States would like to commend the open dialogue and good work conducted at the last in-person COP. The United States is supportive of adopting the draft decision in document UNEP/MC/COP.5/16 with an emphasis on resolving the sole item that remained open at the conclusion of COP 4.2. We encourage the COP to adopt the terms of reference for the effectiveness evaluation group with a goal of presenting its final report at COP 7. The United States would like to compliment the open-ended science group on the good progress the body has achieved. We encourage the COP to continue to support the deliberate and inclusive science-driven process of the OESG, where the primary function is the completion of tasks needed to fully inform the work of the effectiveness evaluation group upon its formation. We also welcome the work of the Secretariat in developing a final list of indicators for consideration and adoption of the COP, and we seek to participate in a fruitful discussion that finalizes the adoption of these indicators. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, United States. Now the floor is for Norway, and Indonesia is following.
Thank you, Madam President. Norway welcomes the intersessional work and thanks the open-ended scientific group for its efforts. We endorse the establishment of the effectiveness evaluation group and the adoption of the indicators as proposed. Monitoring data are an important tool for assessing the effectiveness of the convention, and we strongly support that the data are part of the indicators along with data reported under Article 21. Furthermore, we acknowledge the complexity of the effectiveness evaluation and are in favor of giving the group sufficient time to complete its work. Norway can therefore support extending their timeline until COP7. With respect to the terms of reference, Norway notes that the only outstanding issue is the size of the effectiveness evaluation group. Norway sees the need to balance the importance of regional representation against budgetary limitations and the size of the group that makes it effective and efficient. Norway therefore prefers to limit the number of members of the group from each region and notes the limited number of members in other similar groups, for example, under the Stockholm Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. I have Indonesia, followed by United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Madam President. Indonesia highly appreciates the successful work of the open-ended scientific group in the implementation of the first effectiveness evaluation. In addition, the Secretariat has also deserved our gratitude in successful complying in a list of EE indicators. Regarding the proposed number of effective evaluation group members, Indonesia proposed the adoption of Option 1 to include representatives from each region in the EEG, along with the implementation of stricter decision-making requirement to ensure the EEG effective work. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. Now I'm giving the floor to UK, followed by Iran.
Thank you, Madam President. The UK welcomes the progress that has been made by the open-ended scientific group and the Secretariat on the first effectiveness evaluation during this intersessional period. We share Minamata Convention's commitment to limiting global mercury emissions and releases, and we believe a robust and complete effectiveness evaluation is essential to achieving such aims. The UK supports a limited number of representatives for each UN region within the Effectiveness Evaluation Committee, but can show some flexibility to ensure an agreement. The UK would also like to express our support for the proposed list of indicators in their entirety, as we feel that these are thorough, avoid unnecessary duplication, and inform the effectiveness evaluation of the work the Minamata Convention has done to limit mercury levels. We ask to be included should a group be created to discuss this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, UK, for your intervention. Next on my list, I have Islamic Republic of Iran, followed by China.
Thank you, Madam President. Open-ended scientific group has had productive sessions with tangible outcomes, including preparation of 3 plans for monitoring mercury in different media, assessing mercury emissions and releases in the environment, and analyzing the data related to the above-mentioned issues so far. We would like to draw your attention to the fact that Effectiveness Evaluation Group will be responsible to oversee the development of the Effectiveness Evaluation Report prepared by OESG, and it has a significant role to refine the final report. Effectiveness Evaluation Group is going to review the mandates of OESG and submit it for consideration by the Conference of the Parties. Therefore, we are of the view the maximum suggested number of the members in the related document regarding EEG can help to have a more comprehensive perspective toward the process, and having limited participants in the group cannot fulfill the targets of the EEG. Meanwhile, we are ready to show the spirit of flexibility and cooperation and hope to feel the same attitude to reach a notable step forward on the formation of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group at this COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iran. Next is China, followed by India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chinese delegation would like to thank the Secretariat and the scientific group for their work during the intersessional period. Effectiveness evaluation is an important tool for assessing the evaluation. The convention. We welcome the support and support it. With regards to several issues in the documents, we have the following comments and suggestions about the list of indicators. Before the meeting, the Secretariat consulted parties on the list. We also submitted our comments to the Secretariat about the timeline of the first effective evaluation, considering the fact that the EEG has not yet been established, the timing of the preparation of the reports and the submission of national reports and the relevance of the evaluation results to the timeline. We believe that it is reasonable to review the results of the first round at COP8 in 2029. Concerning EEG, we believe that we support its establishment, considering that the evaluation will reflect the results of the implementation of the convention by the parties in order to ensure the rights and interests of all parties involved. We suggest that there should be sufficient number of members of the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. I'm now giving the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam President. India would like to thank the intersessional work undertaken by Open-Ended Scientific Group in preparing the draft indicators for undertaking the first effectiveness evaluation, as well as the work of the Secretariat in preparing a lot of documents and reports that would help in undertaking the first effectiveness evaluation by the convention. We all understand that effectiveness evaluation is an important exercise, and in the case of Minamata Convention, we are going to undertake it for the first time. And indeed, it will help us assess the strengths and weaknesses or the challenges and issues in the implementation of the convention. It is also important that in undertaking this exercise, the important thing would be, and the challenging aspect would be, to have the data accumulation as well as the data analysis, along with the synergies that needs to be established in regard to collection of the data and collation of the data. So when we undertake this effectiveness evaluation, we need to make it more efficient and effective, and we need to have the pragmatic timeline to complete the first effectiveness evaluation work. Also, during the last COP4, we were able to finalize the terms of reference of the effectiveness evaluation group, bearing a few things, and I hope that this time we'll be able to finalize this these terms of reference for undertaking the first effectiveness evaluation. India looks forward to engaging further in the contact group in order to arrive at a practical and pragmatic decision to undertake the first effectiveness evaluation of the Minamata Convention. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, India. Next on my list, Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. We welcome the work which has been done by the Open-Ended Scientific Group and appreciate the draft decision which was put forward by the Secretariat. We would like to offer our flexibility for the end date of the first effectiveness of evaluation to reach consensus swiftly. We think that it is the utmost priority to agree on the TOR of the effectiveness evaluation group, so that the COP5 decides to start the effectiveness of evaluation process fully. To this end, we support the smaller number of representative of parties from each of the 5 United Nations regions. However, since it is important to agree on terms of reference at this COP, we would like to explore the area where we could seek the flexibility, taking into account the group should be operated efficiently and cost-effectively. As for the adoption of indicators, we would like to appreciate the work
and the facilitation which has been done by the Secretariat and the parties who have submitted their valuable input, and would like to support the list of the indicators that is put forward to this COP for the consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Japan. Now, I don't have any other party on my list except Canada. And after that, I will move to organizations. So Canada, you have the floor.
Apologies, Madam President, for coming in late. Canada would also like to express its appreciation for the work of the Open-Ended Scientific Group and the Secretariat for pulling together the information to date in support of the first effectiveness evaluation. Like others, we understand there is still a significant amount of work to do, so I think we can be flexible with respect to the timeline for the first effectiveness evaluation, final report to the COP. Similar to others, we also believe that at this COP, we really need to get that work started, though, so we would like to see the establishment of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group, and we think, hopefully we can have some conversations about how to achieve that with some flexibility on both sides. So Canada is looking to hope to support those discussions in any future conversations that move forward. And we also support the list of indicators as proposed by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. I see Australia.
Thank you, Madam President. Australia would again like to acknowledge the work of the Open-Ended Scientific Group. We are very keen to see the Effectiveness Evaluation Group operational with the outcomes of the group considered at COP7, noting that it will have been 10 years after the Minamata Convention entered into force. We also are, like our colleagues from Canada, open to further discussions, particularly around proposed number of participants, noting the required resourcing and time constraints that will be placed on the group to deliver the outcomes. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. So I'm moving now to organizations, and I'm going to give the floor to IPEN, followed by European Environmental Bureau. IPEN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We acknowledge the work done by the Science Group since its third meeting, including refining the list of indicators for consideration and possible adoption to be used in the effectiveness evaluation process by COP5. We consider effectiveness evaluation an important pillar of the Convention, as it will generate scientific data based on biomonitoring and environmental monitoring to assess the extent to which objectives of the Mercury Treaty are achieved. IPEN supports the development of the draft list of indicators and has the following suggestions to improve specific indicators on 2, 3, and 6. With regards to indicator 2, on total amount of mercury mined from primary mercury mines, we have 2 comments. This indicator should be more specific, since some countries report quantities of cinnabar, yet others report elemental mercury which isn't equivalent. IPEN proposes an elemental mercury equivalent convention to be provided for parties reporting cinnabar production in tons according to the characteristics of cinnabar in the respective countries. Information about the percentage of mercury in cinnabar will assist accuracy in reporting. A more accurate wording for this indicator can be total elemental mercury extracted from primary mercury cinnabar mines. Our second comment on this indicator is this indicator should cover estimated legal and illegal primary mining of cinnabar quantities. With regards to indicator 3, about rather than asking if parties have endeavored to identify mercury stocks, we suggest the indicator require the number of parties that have actually identified mercury stocks and record the quantity, and the industry types that are the sources of these stocks and for which the stocks are intended to be used. Finally, with regards to indicator 6, about the estimated global amount of mercury in tons per year, that is traded in accordance with the convention, IPEN would like the indicator to reflect: 1, the quantities of legal trade for elemental mercury, mercury added products by HS code, mercury compound, and the quantity of mercury directed to mercury using processes including ISGM. There should be an analysis of mercury quantities trade directed to low and middle income countries. Second point, this indicator should specify mercury traded legally and intended for ISGM use and include an estimated of the illegal quantities used for the same purpose. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. I'm now giving the floor to European Environmental Bureau.
Thank you, Madam President. I am speaking on behalf of the Zero Mercury Working Group. We welcome the proposed draft list of indicators, but while it considers the comments made by the Effectiveness Evaluation Group and has made satisfactory revisions, the Zero Mercury Working Group believes that some of them could be improved. We consider that it is important to know when and why indicators take into account the number and/or the proportion of parties when evaluating the effectiveness of the treaty, so sharing the rationale would increase the transparency. Also, we believe that including the trading and supplying data by purpose would allow to better understand flows and will help measuring the progress in phasing down mercury in various uses under Article 4 and 5. Moreover, collecting detailed information about the volume of mercury-added products that are imported and exported each year is key to evaluating the effectiveness of Article 4, but this indicator, the number 6, has been removed, and we encourage the Conference of Parties to reintroduce it. In addition, evaluating the number of countries that endeavored to develop strategies gives a measure of the attempts done, but doesn't clarify if the strategies have been developed and applied. To evaluate the Convention's effectiveness, information is needed on how many parties have succeeded to develop strategies. Therefore, we suggest to adapt the wording. Finally, we think that the measures taken to provide information to the public on the effects of exposure to mercury should be reported in accordance with paragraph 1 of Article 16. This is to avoid overrating the effectiveness of the Convention, because every single measure taken has the aim of protecting human health, which is the main objective of the Convention, as stated in Article 1. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, EB. So we had an interesting exchange of views and a lot of comments, and I'm requesting your indulgence for some moments to arrange my, my intervention next. Thank you very much. Distinguished delegates, thank you very much for allowing me some minutes to put all my thoughts in one big paragraph that I'm going to share with you now. So I will start by summarize your comments, and I can tell you that I heard parties expressing the wish to resolve the identified outstanding matters for the first effectiveness evaluation as outlined in document 16 at this scope. So thank you for the good spirit of collaboration and also for your overall support to the text of the draft decision. I would like to thank you also for presenting your specific views on the outstanding matters. I have also heard specific comments on the membership of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group, which is the only remaining matter for reaching an agreement on the establishment of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group and its terms of reference. We will need a bit more time to resolve this matter, and I will make a proposal shortly. Regarding the indicators to support the first effectiveness evaluation, I heard support from parties to adopting the indicators and some views of the need of some small refinement. Regarding the timeline of the effectiveness evaluation, I heard flexibility from many parties regarding the timeline for the first effectiveness evaluation, and I also support from several parties that the outcome of the first effectiveness evaluation of the Convention should be considered by the COP at its 7th meeting. In the meantime, I also heard some views about concluding the first effectiveness evaluation at COP6 as well as COP8. So now, please let me make a proposal on how to move forward. On the matter of timeline, I propose that COP could aim for an agreement that takes into account the middle ground and consider the outcome of the first effectiveness evaluation at COP7. With regard to the membership of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group, I would like to establish a Friend of the President's Group, which is tasked to reach an agreement on the matter and report back to me. I would like to invite the following parties to take part in the deliberations as Friends of President: European Union, United States of America, Norway, United Kingdom, Iran, China, Japan, Australia, as well as other parties if they so wish. I ask Leroy Christian of Antigua and Barbuda to moderate the discussion of the Friends of the President. I also ask the Secretariat to facilitate the discussion. The Friends of the President on Effectiveness Evaluation can meet tonight from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in room 3. And lastly, with regard to the proposed indicators, I believe that this matter can be solved by requesting the Secretariat to consult with the interested parties on their suggested changes to the text. I will then prepare a CRP containing all inputs on these matters for consideration in plenary later this week. Is this an agreeable way forward for you? I see no objections. Thank you very much for your support. Okay, with this in plan, let us now move to agenda item 4A on Mercury supply and trade. And I would like to note that this is the first time that COP is invited to consider this matter under its agenda. I invite the Secretariat to introduce document 3.
Thank you, Madam President. Document 3 provides information on the status of implementation of Article 3 of the Minamata Convention based on the first full national reports submitted by parties pursuant to Article 21 of the Convention and the work carried out by the Implementation and Compliance Committee pursuant to Article 15 of the Convention. The Annex to Document 3 sets out a draft decision on the matter. The document contains key findings on informal primary mercury mining, identification of stocks, progress in managing excess mercury available from the decommissioning of chloroalkali facilities, the use of trade forms, and illegal or informal trade under national legislation. The Secretariat would like to note that the Conference of the Parties may wish to consider at its 6th meeting a timeline and a process for addressing whether specific mercury compounds should be made subject to paragraph 6 and 8 of Article 3, pursuant to paragraph 13 of Article 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like to commend the efforts made by parties to control supply, sources, and trade of mercury, and for including in their national reports valuable information on the implementation of Article 3. I encourage parties to continue doing so, as I believe that the sharing of lessons in controlling supply sources and trade is an important step in strengthening the capacities of parties to implement Article 3 provisions. Now, I would like to open the floor to hear views on the presented document, including the draft decision regarding this matter. I note that Australia, Canada, Chile, and the United States have submitted yesterday a CRP on this matter. CRP2 has been available on our website since yesterday. Parties and observers may wish also to present their views on CRP2. As you are already aware, I'm going to give priority in the speakers list to parties. I will take the first intervention from Canada.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, we thank the Secretariat for their compilation of information on the status of implementation of Article 3 and their work on the draft report on mercury trade, supply, and demand. Understanding and controlling mercury trade and supply is a key component in achieving the Convention's objective to protect human health and the environment. The information made available by national reporting and other published reports on international trade has made it clear that there remain some information gaps, particularly with regards to the trade, supply, and use of mercury compounds. It is our view that it is important to understand the supply, trade, and demand of mercury compounds, as these may be converted to mercury or used directly in some products or production processes. With this in mind, Canada, Australia, the United States of America, and GRULAC are proposing a conference room paper to request the Secretariat to initiate a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds, taking into consideration the results of a recent feasibility study prepared by the Natural Resources Defense Council, which concluded that there is sufficient information to move forward with such a report. To clarify, this report would be separate from the report of the effectiveness evaluation and would cover all mercury compounds, not only those already listed in Article 3. The goal of the work proposed in this CRP would be to begin the compilation of information that may be helpful to assist the future work of the COP in making decisions regarding the evaluation of whether the trade in mercury compounds undermines the objective of the Convention as required by Article 3. We look forward to working together with parties to address this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. Next on my list, I have US, followed by Chile.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The United States appreciates the need to consider how best to address the challenges facing parties in their implementation of Article 3, as well as the issues identified by the Secretariat and the Implementation and Compliance Committee. The United States is generally supportive of taking steps to address these challenges and issues. To that end, we support the encouragement by the COP with respect to reporting on all primary mercury mining activities being carried out in their territories, irrespective of their status as formal, informal, or illegal in their national reports. Helping parties to understand the trade provisions of the Convention, to undertake awareness-raising activities related to allowed uses and sources, to encourage parties to strengthen capacity to control mercury trade at the national level, and engaging with the other MEAs and activities within the UN system where benefits or cost savings can be achieved without compromising individual mandates. We see particular usefulness in the Green Customs Initiative. However, in the context of agreeing to work to be undertaken by the Secretariat to address such knowledge gaps, misunderstandings, or implementation concerns with Article 3, we have some questions and concerns. Specifically, we would like to hear what the proposal is for the elaboration on general consent, which the United States believes only the United States, Canada, Japan, and Thailand are using. What further information is the Secretariat seeking when a party exports to those 4 parties? We wonder whether there is any indication that exports, which are not in compliance with the Convention, are occurring to parties that have a general notification in place. If not, the United States would like to see references in paragraph 2 of the draft decision deleted, and as we do not see the need for further information or work on that issue. We would also like to see the efforts. Sorry, a little distracting. It's like my children, right? Sorry, you're on the phone, you know, you're never more attractive than when you're on the phone. Sorry. To that end, we would like to note that the parties just submitted. Sorry, start that point over again. We would also like to see the efforts of the Secretariat directed to the specific needs identified by the parties in their national reporting. To that end, we would note that parties just submitted to the Secretariat information on experiences and challenges faced in the implementation of Article 3 in their national reports. We therefore suggest that this be deleted from paragraph 4, allowing the focus of the collection of information on experiences and challenges to be related to the Bali Declaration on combating illegal trade in mercury, which is of high importance to many countries. We would also encourage the draft decision to direct the efforts of the Secretariat to specific areas of concern to the parties. In addition, the United States does not feel that the trade forms should be revised at this time to address issues that seem not to be covered by the Convention. Finally, in supporting the ongoing reporting of the endeavors of parties to identify stocks and supplies laid out in paragraph 5A of Article 3, at COP 4.2, the United States was clear that we see the identification of such sources and supplies as a tool to allow a party to ensure its environmentally sound disposal, storage, or use of that stock or supply. We do not see reporting on such endeavors as being a basis for the Secretariat to create an assessment of stocks or supplies or sources at the global level or to provide an overview of the current global stocks and sources. We see a significant difference of emphasis and level of resources to be expended for this obligation versus the obligations aimed at the reduction of elemental mercury. The United States, therefore, does not support further work in this area. In closing, we would also like to call attention to the conference room paper that was just referenced by our colleagues from Canada and the draft decision text to study the use, supply, and trade of mercury compounds. With our co-sponsorship, we agree that it is important to understand the lay of the land with respect to compounds, and we are very pleased to co-sponsor this study. We would be happy to submit our suggestions or revisions to the Secretariat in writing as requested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. And now Chile, followed by European Union.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The members of GULAC take pleasure in being co-sponsors of CRP2, requesting a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds. We believe that it is important to address the present lack of information on these compounds. GULAC members are deeply concerned by the possibility that mercury compounds may become elementary mercury and be also used in products that presently contain mercury, such as makeup and cosmetic products. So we support CRP2 to address the supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds in trade. And we would like to review whether additional actions are necessary to identify this source of mercury within the framework of the Minamata Convention. We would like to thank Canada and other co-sponsors for their initiative in this important subject. And happy Halloween, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Chile. So that means that we have to finish early tonight to celebrate. It's okay with me. Thank you for this. Next, it's European Union, followed by Colombia.
Thank you, Madam President. The European Union and its member states would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing a draft decision on mercury supply sources and trade. We acknowledge and appreciate the work that has been done by the Secretariat in analyzing parties' full national reports with respect to Article 3. We stand ready to strengthen the implementation of Article 3 of the Convention by starting a process to develop additional measures supporting activities to effectively reduce supply and control trade in mercury. The European Union and its member states would like to thank Canada, Australia, the United States of America, and GULAC for their conference room paper, requesting the Minamata Secretariat to initiate a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds, and for such a study to be presented to the Conference of the Parties at its 6th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, European Union. Next is Colombia, followed by Norway.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Colombia would like to thank the Secretariat for compiling the information under this agenda item. Colombia considers it to be very important to undertake activities that will strengthen the control of mercury trade, in particular as regards the developing of national capacities. Therefore, we consider it very important to train officials, including customs officials, as part of the Convention's core budget. We would also like to call upon parties for them to provide information in their next national reports on all extraction activity for primary extraction activity for mercury on their territories, regardless of whether this is done formally, informally, or illegally. As regards the draft decision, Madam Chair, Colombia, as the rest of the GULAC members, would like to express its support for CRP2. Furthermore, we would like to suggest an additional paragraph which would read as follows. Establishes the publicly accessible database containing information from parties related to mercury. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colombia. Next on my list, Norway, followed by Uganda.
Thank you, Madam President. Norway would like to support the proposal submitted by Canada and other parties that asks the Secretariat to undertake a study on the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds, as we think it's important to develop a global inventory of mercury compounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. Next on my list, Uganda, followed by United Republic of Tanzania.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The government of Uganda aligned itself to Botswana's position on behalf of the African region with regard to mercury supply, sources, and trade. Government of Uganda wishes to thank the Secretariat for the effort in documenting the draft mercury supply, sources, and trade. Government of Uganda took time to review the draft report on mercury supply, sources, and trade a couple of months ago before COP5 and found it to be very, very informative. The mercury trade routes across the Africa region point to the need for supporting the African region to develop regional instruments in support of restricting mercury trade. Being on the receiving end within the Africa region, there is need to support it to put up containment infrastructure for condemned mercury and mercury compounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uganda. Next on my list, United Republic of Tanzania.
Thank you, Madam President, and the Secretariat for organizing this important event. Tanzania is among the top 3 countries in Africa with large number of artisan and small-scale gold mining, who entirely depend on mercury for the. Madam President, paragraph 6 to 8 of Article 3 of the Convention contain the provision to be implemented by parties in relation to trade in mercury with other parties and with non-parties. Tanzania has taken initiative to control mercury supply and trade. Some of the initiatives include registration of chemical dealers who import mercury with a view of formalization to facilitate control, monitoring. Also, we have prepared guidelines for management of import, use, and disposal of mercury in artisan and small-scale gold mining that have been prepared. These guidelines are aimed on providing guidance on importation, use, and disposal of mercury and the mercury waste from artisan and small-scale gold mining activities. Despite of this effort, more mercury for use in artisan small-scale gold mining into the country without our consent. This is a major challenge for us in complying with paragraph 6 to 8 of Article 3 of the Convention. However, Madam President, the information on experience and the challenge faced in the implementation of Article 3 for consideration by parties in COP6. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Tanzania. Next on my list, I have Panama, followed by Australia.
This is a very important subject, and I have been bringing it up on different occasions. Before the Minamata Convention, in our country, we used this to report mercury use in large quantities. And right after the Minamata Convention, we removed our consent for the import of some 50 tons of mercury because they were untraceable. And when I say that they were untraceable, these 50 tons, it's because they were processed through customs-free areas. These customs-free areas do not indicate the nationality of products, and therefore there is no vigilance. Therefore, via Article 18.8, we banned mercury imports. And for years now, we have no longer received mercury. We have sent the manufacturers this note to not even send requests, but such requests are not even compatible with the Basel Convention. But such actions also lead to information leaking when it shouldn't. And in regard to our own free trade areas and other free trade areas in the world, do they act the same way? This is something that we would need to investigate. Furthermore, the information that we have in the risk analysis unit of the Panama Customs Organization indicates that many ships come through with containers containing mercury, where we have been able to ascertain the ship's manifests, and apparently there is no traceability of the mercury. In the face of such a situation, it's very difficult for us to have trustworthy information as to how mercury is traveling around the world, in this case via ocean ways. But I suppose the same thing happens to Indonesia when they made their statement in Bali on illegal mercury trade. We are sure that all of these mercury movements are issues that we should address immediately. Thank you.
Very much, Panama, for your intervention. Next on my list, it's Australia, followed by Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam President. Australia would like to thank the work of the Secretariat in preparing this draft decision. We believe it's important to strengthen activities to control mercury supply sources and trade, and we would particularly like to signal our support for draft paragraph 5A relating to stocks and sources. Australia are a proud co-sponsor to CRP2, and we'd like to thank our distinguished colleagues from Canada and other co-sponsors for their leadership on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. Switzerland, followed by Guinea next, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Switzerland would like to express thanks to Canada, Australia, United States of America, Chile, for the proposed study on the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds. In our view, it is important to understand global supply sources, trade, and uses of mercury compounds in order to make informed decision in this setting of the Minamata Convention. We thus very much welcome that proposal and would like to express our support to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Next on my list, Guinea.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation wholeheartedly supports this CRP, asking the authors of this CRP to go even a little bit further, even more in depth, because it's a kind of study which isn't going to be easy to have two different strategies for official supplies and another strategy for non-official supplies. Yesterday in our statement we pointed out that while sharing borders with 6 other countries, that mutual accusations are flying as to the source of these emissions. And in gold mining, it is surprising the kind of levels of mercury we have, but we have difficulty identifying the provenance of that mercury and those responsible. So we are suggesting having a very clear strategy and, if necessary, a very specific strategy for developing countries. There is the countries of consumption rather than production. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Panama again. Would you like to take the floor to complement your intervention?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I support a threshold of 0 as far as mercury is concerned. But I do believe that we need to make some adjustments in the questionnaire that the Minamata Convention has published. The convention should adopt certain guidelines for the actual shipping manifests, and that manifest document should be similar to the one under the Basel Convention, which requests a lot of details on the traceability of shipments, the insurance, the nature of the shipment, and many other details that would provide us here with traceability. And that is why I think it's interesting that we have the CRP document here, but I think we need to be very careful about the questions that we ask at each border. All of us have different viewpoints depending on where we are located. In our particular case, since we have the Panama Canal and a lot of shipments traveling through, and also by air as well as by sea, we are in a particular position. And I repeat that it would be of great interest for the CRP document to take all of these things that are being discussed here into account before we start on an actual study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panama. Since I don't have any other parties requesting the floor, I would like to move to observers. And first on my list, I have NRDC, followed by IPEN.
Other than reporting on stocks, there are no supply and trade control measures covering mercury compounds, even though some of the products and processes subject to manufacture and trade prohibitions involve mercury compounds, not elemental mercury. Paragraph 13 of Article 3 obligates the COP to evaluate whether this gap in coverage compromises the objective of the convention, but this evaluation has not yet occurred. As mentioned by Canada before, NRDC recently conducted a study to demonstrate the feasibility of gathering data on mercury compound supply, use, and trade so that parties could determine the significance of the activities and their potential impact on the protection of human health, the objective of the treaty. This study is available on NRDC's website. The study concluded publicly available data was sufficient to provide a reasonably good assessment of the magnitude of mercury compound supply, use, and trade, taking into account disparities in trade data often encountered in these kinds of analyses. And the feasibility study provides a roadmap for how such an inventory may be prepared. We welcome the initiative from Canada, Australia, GRULAG, and the United States to follow up on our feasibility study and request the Secretariat to conduct the necessary inventory prior to COP6. And we look forward to the COP evaluation, since we are extremely concerned that the recent undercover investigation of skin lightening creams identified the current gap in compound coverage as a problem we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, NRDC. Next on my list, IPEN.
Thank you, Madam Chair. IPEN welcomes the analysis of national reports prepared by the Secretariat for this meeting. As most products and legal manufacturing processes that relied on mercury have been phased out, there is little justification to continue the global mercury trade. Most mercury being traded finds its way into ASGM. We observed the emergence of new mercury exporting countries that are party to the Minamata Convention. Therefore, IPEN supports the draft resolution on mercury supply source and trade. We support the call for parties to report on all primary mercury mining activities being carried out in their territories, irrespective of their status as formal, informal, or illegal in their following national reports. We also support CRP2 proposed by Canada, Australia, GRULAG, and United States to begin the compilation of mercury compounds for future works. In addition to adding mercury compound into the next meeting, IPEN invites parties to consider introducing an amendment to Article 3 not to allow the import and export of elemental mercury and cinnabar by 2027, except for environmentally sound disposal. Parties that have already prohibited or banned elemental mercury export could share their lessons learned and barriers to enforcing their regulations. We learned that in some countries, trade or transactions through e-commerce platforms have not been integrated into the country's statistical trade data. Moreover, many developing countries do not have the capacity and tools to monitor the trade of mercury and mercury compounds in e-commerce platforms and social media. Technical guidance and capacity building are needed to improve national reporting, especially on elemental mercury trade that potentially used for ASGM. IPEN also invites delegates to pay attention to the court process and verdicts on confiscated mercury cases, as mercury cannot be destroyed, auctioned, donated, or sold for other purposes under use allowed by the treaty. Lastly, we would like to reiterate that Article 7 on ASGM should not have been listed as use allowed in Article 2K of this treaty. Supporting the Bali Declaration to combat the illegal trade of mercury launched by Indonesia at COP4, IPEN invites delegates to consider amending this article at COP6 and ending mercury trade globally, especially for its use in the ASGM sector. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN, for your comment. Okay, thank you very much for your comments and suggestions. So I heard that there is major support for the CRP, with the exception of one party who had some comments. So in this regard, I would like to ask Colombia to repeat its proposed change to the text of CRP2.
Señora Presidente, ¿será que podemos pedirle unos minutos, por favor, y ya?
Madam Chair, we'd like to request a few minutes because we will then have a text ready to use.
No. Sobre la creación de una base de datos, consulta pública con los consentimientos informados de las partes que contengan toda la información relacionada al comercio de mercurio. Pero que adicionalmente a eso queríamos solicitar un párrafo más.
Okay, Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving us these few extra minutes and for giving us the floor again. Colombia's proposal is to add a paragraph in the draft decision document, not in the CRP, but in the draft decision. And if you allow me, I will read you the paragraph that Colombia would like to add to the draft decision. Are you ready? Proposes the establishment of a database, open for public consultation, with the informed consent among the parties, period. Such a database would contain all information pertaining to mercury trade. Period.
Thank you very much. I see that Colombia asked for the floor, so you have the floor.
In consultation with my colleagues, we have tentatively identified what the issue was. It was an issue in interpretation. So I'll say it in English, and I think that might facilitate. As my colleague said just now, what we were proposing is not an additional paragraph to CRP2, but an additional paragraph to the draft decision that was presented by the Secretariat, and in particular a new E5. So paragraph 5 would be a new E, and it would read in English: establish a clearinghouse mechanism which contains the informed consent between the parties and all information related with Mercury trade. I hope that's clearer. If you need to, I can repeat.
It's more than fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. And I would like to also thank you for your views expressed on this very important matter for the Convention. I heard support from parties to CRP2 for the Secretariat to initiate a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds and begin compilation of information for COP to make decision at COP6. Further, I heard comments from some parties on the proposed draft decision in document 3. So, in this moment, I would like to make a proposal on how to move forward. Regarding the CRP2, I heard a lot of support to the text. Having this in mind, I propose the adoption of the CRP. Can we agree to adopt? Are there any objections? If I see Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. As per this document, the delegation of Saudi Arabia thinks that it should be reviewed and which should be given enough time so that we can all be aware of the content of this document. We will then submit our opinion to the Secretariat concerning this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. So, having this in mind, I invite comments in writing and we'll compile a CRP. And I see Iraq also. Please, you have.
Shukran. Thank you, Madam President. My delegation supports the proposal submitted by Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iraq. Good. So seems like we cannot adopt this at the moment, but having in mind that this is a CRP prepared and promoted by some parties, I encourage the parties that have comments to send the comments to the proponent and to support each other and consult and to come back to me later with the results of the consultation. Today. I really encourage you to come today. Okay, so we move on to the draft decision containing document 3. I ask the United States, Australia, Colombia, and other parties who expressed comments to provide them in writing to the Secretariat today. And I will prepare a CRP with the help of the Secretariat based on the comments received. We will come back to this matter later during this COP. We will also come back to this agenda item later during the meeting. Okay, so we do have some time until the end of the afternoon plenary, and we will move on to the agenda item 4D on emissions of mercury. Mercury emission to air is the major pathway of mercury to affect human health and the environment at a global scale. You remember very well that at COP1 in 2017, it was adopted a set of guidance to implement control mercury emissions from point sources pursuant to Article 8. And after that, this article did not come up to the agenda of COP2, 3, and 4. Now we have good information on the measures taken by parties to control mercury emissions to air from the national reports pursuant to Article 21, and the COP is in a good position to review the progress and consider further action as appropriate. Let me now invite the Secretariat to introduce the document relevant to this agenda item.
Thank you, President. I'm pleased to introduce document MC/COP5/7 on implementation of Article 8 regarding emissions of mercury. The document provides an overview of measures taken by parties to control and, where feasible, to reduce mercury emissions to air from point sources based on the Article 21 national reports, vis-à-vis the different deadlines of national plans, new sources, existing sources, and emission inventories. The annex to the document sets out the draft decision on this matter as follows. The Conference of the Parties encourages parties to advance their efforts to implement Article 8, taking note of the implementation deadlines. Calls upon parties that have chosen to prepare a national plan but have not yet submitted the plan to submit it as soon as possible, encourages parties with experience in using the adopted at COP1 to provide the Secretariat with information on such experience. Request the Secretariat to provide an update to COP6. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like to commend the efforts made by parties to control mercury emissions to air from point sources, although the implementation deadlines for many of the measures were after the reporting period under Article 21. Still, I know that the document includes a draft decision to facilitate continued and enhanced efforts. Now, I would like to open the floor to reflect on the progress in the implementation of Article 8 and on a draft decision regarding this matter. As always, I will give priority to parties in the speakers list, followed by observers. The first intervention I'm going to take is from Burkina Faso, followed by Thailand.
Okay, merci bien.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm taking the floor on behalf of the Africa region to make a statement on emissions and mercury waste. I'm quoting now, with regard to the question of illegitimate emissions of mercury, the African region has encountered many difficulties because of its persistent in the environment, its ability to bioaccumulate, and significant negative effects on human health and in the environment. At the governmental level, institutional level, the data are being aggregated and are very difficult to interpret. From one sub-region of Africa to another, government priorities in terms of the environmental protection differ quite a lot. It's one of the consequences of the harmonization of the intergovernmental process for the elimination of mercury. We also need to point out that governments have internal indicators for emissions of mercury. Not providing this data has a negative impact on financing. From the institutional point of view, it's also important to stress that governments have only very few specialized experts in mercury emissions and various biological matrices. In terms of bioaccumulation, control is non-existent, which leads to a severe lack of quantitative data. The Secretariat has provided assistance to certain countries, such as Burkina Faso, Senegal, and Togo, through the training and in mercury metrology. But these efforts need to be up to the level of the issue. In terms of the private sector today, the lack of metrological equipment and experts in the Africa region significantly hampers the collection of data on emissions from the private and industrial sector. The measurements are very difficult to put in place because certain sectors such as industry of construction industry, cement, artisanal and small-scale gold mining, the extraction of minerals in general is quite impermeable to outside scrutiny. The same goes for mercury and mercury waste. And so it's important to point out that the emissions and waste of mercury are very poorly controlled, very poorly monitored in the Africa region because of this lacune. In terms of science, it's a sector in Africa where we have the greatest number of gaps. We don't have enough equipped laboratories or universities, laboratories accredited to measure mercury emissions and waste. And so the implementation of SIP projects, the development of NAPs and other measures have helped Africa to realize that we don't have either quality or quantity data. And we still need a significant amount of scientific effort to be put in place. Those countries that do have the equipment to collect this data, it's very difficult to compare them with the data from other African countries because of no harmonized experimental protocols on measuring emissions. And so, well, our experts realize more and more that emissions and waste of mercury could not be followed by a single state or a single institution because mercury doesn't respect borders or biological matrices. That's, and even goes beyond our region. In conclusion, it's important to point out, first of all, Madam President, that most areas where we have waste and emissions are being covered. They are being covered by international projects. So important work is being conducted by governments and international agencies to get a handle on emissions in the region. But that action needs to proceed along three main areas. Awareness raising among governments in terms of the needed scientific potential and providing enough material and financial resources to ministries of the environment. Sharing data that could be validated, corroborated by one or more agencies, and finally put in place a regional program to monitor and control emissions and mercury waste long term. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Burkina Faso. Now I'm giving the floor to Thailand, followed by European Union.
Thank you, Madam President. Regarding the matter of mercury emission obligations set out in Article 8 of the Minamata Convention, my delegation supports the review with a view to improve as appropriate the BAT-BEP guidance on emissions. Among others, criteria to identify point sources in each source category contained in Annex D. Emission inventory methodology and related toolkits. Furthermore, my delegation also wishes to share our progress efforts in complying with such provision. Thailand is currently in a process of improving air emission control limit standard for coal-fired and waste-to-energy power plants as to targeted point sources of mercury and mercury compounds emissions to the atmosphere in Annex D to the Convention. Indeed, such bold limit standards are not only for controlling criteria air pollutants, but also hazardous air pollutants, in particular mercury emissions, and they almost finalized an issue. This trigger is also domestically aligned with Thailand's Power Development Plan for the 2080 to 2037 and related regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thailand. Now I have you, followed by Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President. The EU and its member states would like to thank the Minamata Secretariat for the analysis of parties' national reports with respect to the implementation of Article 8 on emissions of mercury. We welcome the proposal by the Minamata Secretariat and encourage parties to advance their efforts in the implementation of Article 8 and updating COP6 on parties' experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EU. Next is Pakistan, followed by US.
Thank you, Madam President. Pakistan would like to appreciate Global Environment Facility for a project titled Assessment of Existing and Future Emissions Reduction from the Coal Sector toward the Implementation of the Minamata Convention and the Stockholm Convention on Persisting Organic Pollutant, to assess the potential of a reduction in mercury and persistent organic pollutant emission from coal-fired power plants and industrial boilers. Pakistan would like to emphasize that the Secretariat may provide the technical support for developing national plan pursuant to paragraph 3 of Article 8. We would also like to urge the Secretariat to organize training session for the use of best available technique and best environmental practices to control emissions from relevant sources and the methodology for preparing inventories of emissions. Finally, Pakistan supports the draft decision in the document MC/COP5/7. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Pakistan. Next on my list, I have United States of America.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States welcomes the update from the Secretariat on the measures taken by the parties to control emissions to the atmosphere. The United States supports an update from the Secretariat at COP6 regarding the submitted national plans and submitted experiences using the guidance. Finally, the United States encourages parties to take note of the deadlines and requests for the establishment of emission inventories in view of the importance of these activities to the successful implementation of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. I don't have any other party on my list, so I will go to give the floor further to organizations, and I'm going to allow IPEN to have the next intervention.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speaking on behalf of IPEN and its participating organization, Toxics Link India. Emissions into the air are one of the most significant contributors of mercury releases into the environment, affecting the food chain and human health, hence the need to hasten action on the national action plans to reduce and control emissions. Countries only have 4 years to implement measures to meet their obligation for the existing coal-fired power plants and other point sources listed in Annex to implement and regulate mercury emissions. Simultaneously, there is also a need for alternative assessment for new energy production projects to ensure that clean, renewable energy production is prioritized above fossil fuel based on mercury-emitting sources. Furthermore, we observed the trend of using RDF or refuse-derived fuel as co-firing in coal-fired power plants. This is concerning and might increase harmful chemical emissions from the coal plants and interfere with the efforts to strip of mercury for coal power plants stacks. It's also important to mention the need for more studies and data on mercury releases, including from the oil and gas sector, since the available data is inadequate. Countries also need to ensure the implementation of provisions of BAT and BEP for all sources of emission to protect public health and the environment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. So I see Iraq would like to take the floor. Just a second. I just want to let you know that we have only 4 minutes and 30 seconds of interpretation. So you need only 1 minute. Okay, I'm counting. So you have the floor.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيس. بشكل مختصر وسريع أود أن أطلب من مؤتمر الأطراف أن
I'd like to request the conference of the party they foresee examination of a mechanism for the evaluation of our success in terms of implementing this item or this article of the Convention. We need to conduct studies on the volume of mercury emissions and their reduction over the past few years, as well as the positive impacts on the environment that would result from that reduction in the use of mercury. Perhaps the Secretariat would like to secure the necessary means of accomplishing that task. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Iraq. Well, all I can say is that I'm encouraged by the positive views expressed by a number of parties, and I would like to propose you that the Conference of the Parties now enters decision-making mode, and I note support by parties to the draft decision. Therefore, I am confident and I really believe that COP can proceed and finalize this agenda item now. Can we adopt the draft decision on implementation of Article 8 emissions of mercury as contained in Annex 8 to Document 7, pending confirmation from the budget group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for 2024-2025? Are there any objections? Seeing none, it is so decided. And with this, we complete consideration of agenda item 4D. Thank you very much for your support. And with that, indeed, we have come to the end of the very long and intense plenary focus day. I would like to thank you all for the support and flexibility that has enabled our progress through the many agenda items. Tomorrow morning, I will first call on the respective chairs of the group we have established, namely Contact Group on Annexes A and B, Contact Group on Program of Work and Budget, Contact Group on Mercury Waste Threshold, Friends of the President Group on Reporting, and Friends of the President Group on Effectiveness Evaluation to report back to the conference on the progress made. Lastly, but also very important, for those regions still outstanding on the naming of the officer of the Bureau, also for ICC and SIP, please let the Secretariat know the names today. The second day of the COP is due date for these names, so these need to be provided now. This will enable us to elect and confirm these important officers tomorrow. And I think that is it for today. And before I adjourn, I would like to ask the Secretariat to inform on the arrangements made for the current contact groups to continue to meet tonight and complete their work, and any other housekeeping notes. Thank you.
The contact group on mercury waste thresholds will meet in room A from 1900 hours to 2200 hours. Then the Friends of the President on effectiveness evaluation is to meet in room 3 from 1900 hours to 2030 hours. Further, we understand that the contact group on program of work and budget will meet tomorrow during the lunch period, but we will, of course, update you tomorrow morning in plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I adjourn the plenary now, and we shall resume the plenary at 10 a.m. sharp tomorrow morning. Thank you.